Now, the former Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser's political memoirs have won the Book of the Year at the New South Wales Premier's Literary Awards. Co-authored by journalist Margaret Simons, Malcolm Fraser, The Political Memoirs, won the $40,000 Douglas Stewart Prize for Non-Fiction and the $10,000 Book of the Year award. Malcolm Fraser and Margaret Simons join us now from Mascot in Sydney, and welcome to you both and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fraser, I might start with you with a quote that you once had. For a long time, you said, "I had nothing but contempt for politicians who wrote books that were fundamentally self-serving." Have you changed your mind?
No, not at all.
I'm not suggesting that this was a self-serving book, but what made you come to this decision to sit down finally and put it down on paper?
Well, Melbourne University Press had wanted to write a book. I was determined that if a book were written, it would be accurate, which meant an enormous amount of research, because memories are extraordinarily fallible, and books written from memory have many inaccuracies. And I said somebody is going to have to do the hard work, and somebody is going to have to do the writing, and I can... I'll talk, I'll be interviewed as much as necessary and all the rest. So MUP produced Margaret Simons, she interviewed me and I interviewed her, and in the end we came together. And I think the result, and I was really delighted with the process, because Margaret adds her own integrity to the book and wouldn't have had a name on the book if she thought it was distorting the facts or giving just a one-sided view of events. And therefore, I still have contempt for self-serving books. This one is designed to lay out what happened and then let the reader judge. Well, did Fraser do it right? Did Fraser do it wrong? And I think that's a different sort of book.
Having said, though, Mr. Fraser, you would have found it difficult in the sense of really wanting to have your feelings and your views of history put forward.
Well, I'm glad it's all been recorded. Yes, of course I am. Especially in days when the Labour Party has marched leagues to the right and the Liberal Party has marched more leagues to the right. I'm not sure that there are too many Liberals out there in the federal parliament. I think there are an enormous number of people who would like Liberal leadership in the streets of Australia. But the political process, I believe, from both major parties has divorced itself from the reality of Australian public life.
So, Mr. Fraser, what you're saying very strongly is that we are lacking leadership in political life.
Well, aren't we? Do you disagree?
No, well, I'm not here to put forward those comments, but it is. I think people will be very interested to hear that you feel that.
Well, I do. I mean, so many important questions have been run away from. So many things are taken for granted. There wasn't a debate about Afghanistan until the Greens forced it. Neither the Liberal Party or the Labour Party wanted to debate it, and we had troops committed there.
Why do you think that's happening? Why do you think that is happening?
There are many reasons for that. Part of it is the way the political parties now operate. People, candidates with independence of mind are not really selected. People develop their loyalties, their allegiances from a very early age, from university probably. And, the parties want candidates who are going to toe the party line. They're not going to want candidates who will show a degree of independence and say, no, that's not right. I know very distinguished people in this city, in Sydney, who were beaten by what I call party apparatchiks for pre-selection. I say, why? Why did this happen? Oh, I guess they thought I'd be a bit independent. And, this was somebody right at the top of his profession with a proven record
who would have been
an adornment to the parliament.
I'd like to come back to this, your feelings about the political system at the moment, but Margaret, not to leave you out, I'm sure people would be very intrigued to have been listening to some of the conversations that took place between you and Malcolm Fraser. Take us through the process a little.
Well, as Malcolm said, when I was first approached to do the book, my first thought was, oh gosh, that would be interesting. And it was interesting. It was a very serious kind of fun. As Malcolm said, I did a lot of interviews. I spent many hours in the archives. Then I would write a draft. We would argue over the draft. I would rewrite. And we arrived at a book that I think we're both happy with and delighted to get the prize.
How fierce were the arguments?
Well, we had our moments.
Blood wasn't drawn.
No, blood wasn't drawn. Blood wasn't drawn. It was, it was all good fun. There was one long day, I remember, that we spent in Melbourne arguing about the Vietnam War, with both of us having books at 10 paces, so to speak. But as I say, we're both very happy with the result. And one thing that Malcolm kept doing was sending me back to the original sources, to the archives. So if he queried something I'd written, I'd have to go and find the evidence. And as a result of that process, there's actually new information about things like the Gorton, the fall of the Gorton government and so on. There's actually new information that's new to history in the book, partly as a result of Malcolm's insistence on archival sources.
So he was very rigorous in terms of that research. And did you find it was more on the factual side than the interpretation side?
Well, the research on the archives, yes, certainly the factual side, and the interpretation was a matter of coming to understand the man, coming to understand his thinking. I interviewed other people as well as Malcolm, and telling the story.
Malcolm Fraser, I'd like to come back to you for a moment because you're talking about that political system. Do you think, in a way, you have found yourself to be far more effective outside of the political system than within it?
Oh, it was a different political system. It was a Liberal Party when I was in it. The changes, I think, have occurred over the last 20, 25 years, perhaps, since the middle 80s anyway. In today's world, you wouldn't believe that for 45 years we ran a bipartisan immigration policy, a bipartisan policy in relation to refugees. Gough Whitlam did not oppose what he'd originally made a decision against. When my government changed it, he did not oppose Vietnamese, Indo-Chinese refugees coming here in very large numbers, over 20,000 a year for 3 years in a row. So there were different days. We didn't play politics with the lives of people who were fleeing the most terrible circumstances. Today, it seems, the Parliament will play politics with any issue whatsoever.
And is that because winning is so important, being in government is so critical? Lindsay Tanner has said too that the whole political system is at the mercy of the shock jocks, the media in fact. Do you think that plays into it?
Well, it plays into it, but I think Lindsay blames the media too much because very often it's politicians who feed the media. If somebody gets up and says this is the most important issue of our time and then runs away from that issue, then you know that obviously gives the media a lot of food. They can play around with it. So I still believe it would be capable for good leadership to set the agenda, to try and define what sort of Australia we want 10, 15, 25 years out. Now, who talks about that? Are we always going to be, as we have been over the last 20 years, more so than ever before, a compliant, almost, I was going to use the word grovelling, but that might be overstating it, partner of the United States? Or we're going to recognise that Australia has national interests which are sometimes different from those of the United States. We're going to follow America into more wars. You go back over 50 years, and it was Menzies who told Eisenhower, if you have a war with China over Taiwan, Australia will not be part of it. Now, where is that sense of independence today? I don't think it exists
anymore. Margaret, I'm going to leave you with the final question because the subject of the book probably shouldn't have the last word. Very quickly, what is the measure of Malcolm Fraser, the measure of the man?
Well, when I started work on the book, I hardly knew Malcolm. I'd met him once, but not really to speak too much. And I've ended the process with a great deal of respect, both for the man himself and for his record. I hope that people who read the book will get a sense of what leadership entails.
Margaret Simons and Malcolm Fraser, congratulations once again, and many thanks for joining us on ABC News Breakfast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.